focusing mostly on the lives or the rights of people living with disability. And, the people living with disabilities, not just one disability, disabilities. And it's a special sponsored program. And today to look at varieties of questions bordering around the circle. But let me start properly because my way of introduction might leave a cue or leave out one or two things. I'm going to introduce them properly and then we'll have this conversation immediately after now. Are you there? Are you ready for us today? Because I am very ready.
Dear leader, dear political leader, whatever position at federal, state or local government, remember that democracy is government of the people, for the people, and by the people, and persons with disabilities are people too. Protect the rights of persons with disabilities by ensuring disability mainstreaming in your agenda. Make and implement existing laws and build an inclusive society for all. A better and progressive Nigeria is an inclusive Nigeria. A better and progressive state is an inclusive state. Think inclusion, plan inclusion, and be inclusive. This message is brought to you by FAECARE Foundation, supported by Disability Rights Fund as part of Disability Rights Initiative. Dear leader, dear political leader, whatever position at federal, state or local government, remember that democracy is government of the people, for the people, and by the people, and persons with disabilities are people too. Protect the rights of persons with disabilities by ensuring disability mainstreaming in your agenda. Make and implement existing laws and build an inclusive society for all. A better and progressive Nigeria is an inclusive Nigeria. A better and progressive state is an inclusive state. Think inclusion, plan inclusion, and be inclusive. This message is brought to you by FAECARE Foundation, supported by Disability Rights Fund as part of Disability Rights Initiative. Disability Rights Initiative Program DREAM, coming to you live every third Thursday of the month on Wish FM 99.5 by 10:30 a.m. This program is brought to you by FAECARE Foundation and her partners. Disability rights are human rights too. Disability Rights Initiative Program DREAM.
We need no much introduction again. FAECARE Foundation, that is a very known foundation that caters to the needs of people living with disability. And I have if you call her the CEO, if you call her the major representative of FAECARE Foundation, Angela Njoko, FAECARE. Freki Andrew Essien. This morning right here in the studios. You're welcome.
Oh, thank you. My name is Freki Andrew Essien.
Oh, okay. Freki Andrew Essien. And we also have Angela Njoko right here in the studios. Angela, you're welcome. All right, you might want to speak up a bit so we can hear you properly this morning. We're starting off without wasting any more of our time this morning. Frankie Andrew Sien, I'm going to start with you this morning. When we talk about FAECARE, what are we talking about? Somebody might think that it's a name of a fridge or something. So I want better explanations.
Okay, so FAECARE is an acronym for Frankie Andrew FAECARE Foundation, and it is a non-profit organization with a vision to add value to the lives of target or vulnerable groups. As an organization, we have identified to work with orphans of vulnerable children, persons with disabilities, youth, and the less privileged in society. And one of the things that we do is bringing a variety of programs targeted at the different vulnerable groups, programs and projects. And this is one of such, which is targeted at persons with disabilities. So FAECARE is a non-profit organization, or NGO as they would call. We fall into the third sector, and we've been in existence since 2013.
Really?
Yes, and we celebrated our 10th anniversary this year, ensuring that we provide step-gap support services to these vulnerable groups that we have identified to add value to their lives.
I've wondered why we're so laudable and a very heightened service to humanity, why it hasn't come to light yet until I think people like the person talking to you haven't heard about FAECARE. Well, I'm glad that we're here now. I'm glad that we're doing what we're doing now. If you talk about people living with disabilities, you also talk about the Disability Right Initiative project.
Yes.
What is that about?
Okay, so like I said, and you keep hearing me saying persons with disabilities, there's no living within that structure.
Yes.
That's a cue. So one of the things that we do is we curate programs based on needs, based on our different thematic areas to directly target the different groups that we work with. And one of such groups is persons with disabilities. And one of the things that we started was what we call Disability Rights Initiative Project. And that project is a program where we build the capacity of persons with disabilities to advocate for their rights in society, focusing on River State this particular time. And being on DRIP allows us to also create a lot of awareness as regards disability rights and issues around disabilities. So Disability Rights Initiative Project is to build the capacity of persons with disabilities in Nigeria, specifically in River State, to advocate for protection and advancement of the rights of persons with disabilities. We have a niche where we say nothing about us without us. So this is a program that enables us to do that. We also are able to bring a lot of information and education to the general public around statutory laws that protect the rights of persons with disabilities and different lifestyle issues around disability. So it's all disability.
If we keep talking about disabilities, please, I would want you to explain to us who is a person living with disability, because the person listening to us might not know. We want to break it down.
Okay, so what we have also done is ensure that because we're coming with monthly episodes, so we have curated the programs to cater to different topics. And today, being the first episode on Wish FM 99.5, our focus is understanding disability. So in answering your first question, it would be okay if I explain what disability is before I hit on who a person with disability is. Okay. Again, COSPI, remove living from your vocabulary. So disability, in understanding disability, there is a document that we use within the disability community, a document that we'll speak to in later episodes, and it's called the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And why is that important? Because it defines disability in the context of development, in the context of interaction of persons with disabilities with the environment and other factors. So in describing or defining disability according to the UNCRPD, it is an umbrella term, and you rightly said, not disability, but disabilities. And what it does is that's an umbrella term for impairments, activity limitation, and participation restriction. Three key aspects. Why? Because it doesn't stop at defining disability as just an impairment, because a lot of times people just focus on disability as a health condition or a challenge. But it takes it beyond that to say when that impairment interacts with societies, let's say the environment, let's say personal factors, and the person's activities are limited, the person's participation is restricted, then disability has happened.
Okay.
So it takes the definition of disability or our understanding of disability further from just being a health condition, because this is something that is long-term for most persons, and understanding that beyond just the obvious impairment, and you focus on how it interacts. So for example, I want to enter into a place. Disability is aggravated if in my interaction with the environment there's no accessibility. And so I cannot access that place on equal basis with others. Now that is disability.
Okay.
Because we must begin to understand it. And that definition is so key to us because it takes the responsibility of ensuring that we remove barriers to disability on everyone. So because, I mean, if a person has an obvious impairment and you're focused on trying to heal the person and that doesn't come through, does that automatically mean that that person should be excluded from society? The answer is no. So in bringing that conversation and bringing that definition, according to the UN CRPD, where we harper on that interaction with of the impairment, with environmental factors, with personal factors that will cause activity limitation and participation restriction for that person, where the person is not able to enjoy life on all aspects of life, when society fails to uphold and ensure that that individual, who is a key part of the citizenry, is part of the conversation, then we begin to say disability has happened.
Okay, so God help me, please.
Yes.
Take away the leaving.
Yes, and I can explain why.
I understand. I totally, because a dead man does not. We shouldn't be talking about disability. Now, if you can explain to us types of disabilities, especially those prevalent here in Nigeria, because this is where we are. Can you please tell us types of disabilities that we're looking at prevalently?
Okay, I can do that. But I like doing something because we're here to build capacity. I'm here with Angela. So I would like Angela to just speak to types of disabilities.
Okay.
Go ahead, yeah.
We have different types of disabilities. We have the physical type. We have the neurological type. We have the psychosocial type.
We
have the physical type.
Okay.
We have the intellectual type.
Okay.
We have the neural type. We have the sensory disability.
Okay.
That's all.
So to elaborate on that, so when we talk about physical disabilities, you're speaking to a person who has an obvious physical challenge, so mobility impairment. And why we're talking about types of disabilities is very important because I've seen people in high-ranking positions who erroneously say, oh, I would rather not call you persons with disabilities, I'll call you physically challenged.
Okay.
And then we automatically tell them that what you have done is that in insisting, you have disenfranchised a whole group of persons. So there are types of disabilities, and this categorization is based on impairment. So we have physical, so a person who has polio, a person who has maybe spinal cord injury, amputation, different types. Then we have the psychosocial. Psychosocial disability is something that has really come into the forefront because it's also called an invisible disability.
Okay.
A lot of times,
how
because persons who have psychosocial disability are people that fall under the spectrum of depression. So from manic depression or bipolar disorder, they have now been categorized as persons with disabilities. So the person you would see, but you may not know that the person has a disability. In fact, there was a whole argument as to whether it was really disability, but they have been categorized. If it is clinically diagnosed, that you are a person with psychosocial disability. And then we have intellectual disability. And this has a lot to do with learning disabilities. So you have children who have cerebral palsy, children who have Down syndrome, those types of disabilities that may cause learning to be slow, learning disability, autism across the spectrum. We have the last one she said, neurological or sensory. And that has to do with when the impairment affects any of the senses. So under that, we have persons who are visually impaired, persons who are hearing impaired, other words called blind or deaf. So then you have deaf-blind. Those are people who have both visual and hearing impairment.
Okay.
Yes, so those are the broad categories of disabilities or types of disabilities based on impairments.
All right. You quite explained what disability is, and you spoke about society. What are the different ways in which the society may view or interact with persons with disability that can result in their exclusion or inclusion in our society?
Okay, so I'm going to join the thinking. There's something that we call, and you'd see that that's the next question. So there's something that in the disability community, of course, we have intellectuals, and they have done some research, and they've categorized the perspectives that people have of disabilities, or the thinking that people have of disabilities, as models of disability. So the way a person sees or perceives disability is one way the person can exclude a person with disability. And in the next episodes, we'll talk about some myths and misconceptions of disability. But coming back to the models of disability, the first one that is really prevalent is what we call the charity model of disability.
Okay.
Charity and welfare. And what that does is that people perceive disability as largely welfare. So this person should be on the down, where I am the benefactor of that person. And just to put out there that as I begin to explain all these perspectives, none of them is wrong. But as soon as the thinking begins to limit that person's activity, restrict that person from being fully participatory in society, then we begin to have an issue with it.
You mentioned prevalence,
yes.
And the type of disability let's come down to the states here at Main River State.
Yeah, so before we do that, if it's okay, I would like to talk about the 4 broad types and tell you, yes, the most prevalent. And you will even be able to tell by the time I describe them. So that first one, which I talked about, the charity model. So think about someone who is begging on the street. The position of that person is always on the ground, arms stretched out and asking for help. So what it does is that it puts persons with disabilities in the position of always being helpless and being objects of pity. So anybody who has that kind of thinking definitely would interact as with a person with disability on that level, no matter how the person tries to, or the person proves that I'm beyond your charity, I'm not a charity case. The other way of thinking or perspective that people have of disability is what we call the medical model. That one is more curative. So it doesn't matter how that person achieves, you should be cured. So that one is very a challenge, because what it does is that it limits persons from disabilities from living their lives fully, because they're so focused on getting well. And you know that we're very religious in our society. Everybody is spiritual. So that is where a mother would rather not take her child to school when that child has the right to education. But we'll be going from one crusade, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that.
Okay.
But like I said, when your way of thinking or seeing disability begins to limit that person from fully participating in life, then we have an issue. Then a third one, which brings society into play, is what we call the social model. And all of these concepts of disabilities came as we began to study more and see that disability was just not a health condition that has to do with human development, that has to do with public health, that also has to do with the rights of persons. And so the second model now brings society into the picture, where it says it's not just about the impairment, but it's what society does that aggravates or removes barriers to this person with disability. So the social model focuses on removing barriers to disabilities. So for example, attitudinal barriers, physical barriers, it puts that on society to do right by that person. So for example, if I'm coming into this premises and it's upstairs and I can access it, then it behoves on the organization to ensure that I have access to be able to get to where I need to get to. And so the next and the last one is the rights model. And what that does is that it now brings disability thinking into systems, so that it's not just individuals who are removing barriers, but it is institutionalized and put into our systems, so that it's not about if I feel like it's that person's right to be able to get into that. And in the disability community, we really hinge on the rights model, because it allows for structures and policies and laws that would now enforce or ensure that the rights of these people, who are over 30 million in Nigeria, are protected and promoted.
And that's brilliant. If you are a person with disability listening to us right now, it's pertinent. It's very important that you pay close attention to what's going on. We'll take a very quick one to bring you a goodwill message, and we'll be back to talk about some of the things around disabilities and perception, mostly, that our people have about people with disabilities in River State, in Nigeria, in extension. Stay here. Do not touch a dial.
Dear leader, dear political leader, whatever position at federal, state, or local government, remember that democracy is government of the people, for the people, and by the people. And persons with disabilities are people too. Protect the rights of persons with disabilities by ensuring disability mainstreaming in your agenda. Make and implement existing laws and build an inclusive society for all. A better and progressive Nigeria is an inclusive Nigeria. A better and progressive state is an inclusive state. Think inclusion, plan inclusion, and be inclusive. This message is brought to you by FAECARE Foundation, supported by Disability Rights Fund as part of Disability Rights Initiative. Disability Rights Initiative Program DREAM. Every third Thursday of the month on Wish FM 99.5 by 10:30 a.m. This program is brought to you by FAECARE Foundation and her partners. Disability rights are human rights too. Disability Rights Initiative Program DREAM.
If you just tuned in, this is a program supported by a program really sponsored by FAECARE Foundation, and I have Freki Andresian right here. I also have Angela Njoko representing this great organization. We're looking at rights and privileges of people with disabilities. I'm trying so hard. If you see the mental picture I'm painting in my head to put out the leaving out of this conversation, I've learned one thing this morning, and that's very, very key. I'll leave it with it for as long as I leave here. Right. We're still here conducting this conversation. I'm going to open up the phone lines, but not now. I'll ask some very few questions, key questions, and then I'll open up the phone lines for you to participate, have a say in the discussion that we're having this morning. Before I come to Angela, I'm going to come to you, Freki. We've talked about perception. I know you harped on it a few times, but I want in concrete detail how the perception of people living in River State about people with disabilities, how bad is it?
Okay, so when it comes to River State, the prevailing perception that people have of disability is of the charity way of thinking, where they consider that people with disabilities should just be charity cases. In fact, the organization is taking on a research to really check if that is the thinking that people have. So we're going to be doing a research to persons with disabilities to see the knowledge they have, the awareness they have, and the attitude that they have towards disability and persons with disabilities. And once we conclude that research, we'll also be able to put forward to see the level of awareness that people have in state, yes, on disability and disability rights. But with respect to the thinking, across those four models that I just expressed earlier, that's the charity, the medical, the social, and the rights model. The key one that we've seen prevalent, and it also actually shows in the attitude even up to government on how they deal with issues around disabilities, because a lot of times we have one-off interventions where you just come and you share rights. And I repeat that there's nothing wrong with any of these models, but where they begin to infringe on the rights of the persons, then we begin to have a challenge with it. So the prevailing way of thinking that we have around is the charity model. The other one that it comes close is the medical model. That one is really, it happens a lot in the family space, where it's all about get well first or get better first. And I'm like, this thing here, you go tell. So those are the two things that we see around.
All right. All right, so quickly, Angela, let me come to you. What do you think will be the preferred approach to viewing people with disabilities?
The best approach should be the right model. The best approach should be the right model.
Okay, which is?
Where everybody in the society is being seen as the same. No pity, no charity case here. Everybody should just be in everyone is perceived to be in the right way.
But wouldn't that put the person with disability at a disadvantaged position? Let me tell you how. For instance, someone with visual impairment walks into not provided the right amenities to function properly as a human being with the society that we're in. Are you telling me not to have pity or help out that person?
If everything, let's say structure-wise, everything is being...
But we do not have it now. That's the challenge that we have.
Yes, and if I can jump in, I'd like to say that ignorance of the law is not an excuse anymore. So in creating awareness, we are saying this, that you must begin to think inclusion. That a person with disability hasn't come across you doesn't mean that a company cannot begin to put in policies. We call them inclusive policies, where you are intentional about inclusion. That's the language we need to speak. So I have said that while we are advocating that the rights of persons with disabilities is key, that it doesn't erode the area of the welfare of a person with disability. So to answer your question, where you have not provided the amenities, it is the right thing to do to ensure that that person is assisted. It is not pity.
All right.
It is still you doing right by that person.
Okay. So, okay, that's not pity. All right. Okay. I just wanted to be clear on that. Time to open up the phone lines for you to jump into this conversation and then have your say. Pretty much easy question for you listening to us this morning. You might have one or two relatives who are living with with disabilities this morning, and hey, do you think we're doing right by the way we perceive and the way we think, by the way we look at people with disabilities in our society? What are we not doing rightly as human beings, as citizens of the Federal Republic of Nigeria? What should the government, how do we persuade government to do more, to do the right things? Because these are laws passed on by government, and if we see government officials, government institutions, MDAs contravening some of these laws, how do we then put them right into doing what is right? 0708-029-5995, 0708-029-5995, 0907-084-9073. But the numbers to call this morning, 0708-029-5995 and 0907-084-9073. You can send a text message to 0702 500 2007, 0702 500 2007. When you do call in, please stay away from your radio sets. Please, I wouldn't want us to repeat this as we go on. No, it wouldn't sound well that we are constantly repeating that you stay away from your radio set so that you don't damage our ears. The consultation fee for a doctor now is very expensive.
Very high.
I don't want my ears damaged.
You don't want frequencies we cannot hear again.
So we, right here in the studios we have representatives from FAECARE Foundation and have FAECARE Andrew Essien and Angela Njako. It's been a very fruitful conversation so far. Fruitful? Yes. I've learned one or two things today. In fact, I'm blown away by the knowledge that I'm getting today. First off, I learned that I shouldn't associate disability with leaving. I should just throw that away off the window off, and then embrace the fact that it's disabilities. It's with disability, people with disabilities, and not leaving with disabilities. As we await the calls and the text messages to flood in, let's look at something very prevalent in this part of the world. There are myths everywhere. Myth that, for example, let's talk about the myth that that people who, especially people who live with albino, in some countries in Africa are used for something ritualistic. All right, so let's begin to disprove that.
Okay, so Cosby is in a real hurry, and that is our second episode, which is myths and misconceptions.
We will still talk about that. Let's breeze
of disability. And I would have liked to quiz Cosby to know if he really now understands disability. And there's something that I want to say to the general public, because a lot of times we disassociate ourselves with the responsibilities of others, and it's easy for us to jump and talk quickly about the government. And I just want to mention that when it comes to the issues around disabilities, we must begin to understand that you don't need to wait for a person with disabilities in your family or to be close to you in proximity for you to be intentional about inclusion. My message to members of society, especially those who offer public service, is to understand that you cater to a dynamic and a diverse citizenry. And you must understand that children with disabilities must go to school. Persons with disabilities will come to the hospital. Persons with disabilities should be gainfully employed in civil and public service in state and federal levels. Understanding this begins to make you a better person when we're talking inclusion. And because a lot of times it's easy for us to say, oh, government is not bringing laws or government is not doing laws. But the other thing I say is when the government does bring the laws, it comes back and beholds on society to ensure that these laws are implemented. Because I've said it before, ignorance of the law is not an excuse.
Sure.
One of the things that we're going to be doing in the course of this program, and I really encourage you that on Parliament every third Thursday, that you tune in, is that we're going to break down what some of these laws are. We're going to bring you the statutory laws that are prevalent or are that we hold in Nigeria and even in river states that protect the rights of persons with disabilities. We're going to even discuss what these rights are so that we begin to become aware. So in understanding disability, and one of the myths he talked about is the ritualistic attachments to, for example, persons with albinism. It is a myth, it's a misconception. Doesn't matter how much of the melanin that the person with albinism doesn't have, it will not help your sacrifice. So it will not even cure the HIV you're sacrificing for. It will not bring you money. So I hope I've thrown that out of the window. We're going to bring a lot more of that next episode.
All right. Before we draw the curtain to a close, and then say our bye-byes. This message here is coming from John. It says, my mother lives with disability. That's the way the text message came. I want to know how she can get help with your organization. She's going to mention that because that's our next stop. When someone say, I want to get help from FAECARE, how do they contact? How can we reach FAECARE? How can we, do business? How can we talk with them? How can we work with them? How can we support them?
Okay, so like I said earlier, when it comes to issues around disability, we have our thematic areas, and we would not step out of those thematic areas. So we engage with the persons to know what the needs assessment may be, and we're able to do referrals or linkages if it's something that we cannot cover. We would never take on what we cannot cover, because I've seen that when people associate with persons with disabilities, we tend to jump to conclusions. So the first thing I'll tell the young man is, when you say help, what does that mean? It's a very broad term. And one of the ways that you can best know how to help your mother.
I will let you go on. Let's take this call. Hello. Good morning.
Radio Chief of Wish 99.5 FM, good morning.
Good morning, Engineer II. You're welcome.
That our special guest in the house. Good morning.
Sister, thank you.
Thank you. I've heard what they are saying. I want to advise the governor of Rivers State, Kubara, to employ the services of these young men and woman, a man and woman, to be in the cabinet so that they can understand what is their problem. So that's my advice to the governor. Let me employ as the two of man and woman as a commissioner in his cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contribution this morning. You were saying?
Yes, thank you very much for that contribution. And what he said is true. Nothing about us with this, about us without us. So what you're saying is very true. This is a new lease on the government of Rivers State. So it is important for him to have persons with disabilities in his cabinets, either special advisors or having a commission for persons with disabilities, or also repealing the existing law. We'll come to that. Repealing the existing laws or domesticating the federal law to ensure that the rights of persons with disabilities in Rivers State are upheld. The truth of the matter is that Rivers State, and I can say it anywhere, is not an inclusive state.
Really?
No, they are still far. The journey is very far. I
will get you to elaborate on this.
And I will elaborate it with Jesus' joy and all the joys you can bring. Because when you still see disability intervention as individualistic, you can't go far. But when you see it right space, and I'll give an example. A company wants to employ persons. The rights of persons with disabilities when it comes to public announcements of vacancies is that you must make sure that the numbers of persons you're employing are at least 5% of persons with disabilities. Now that covers a population of people.
Okay.
When you make it individualistic, you limit it to one person. And that's where we still are. You can't continue like that. You can't go to a place and you see one graduate who is a person with disability and you bless the person with millions. That ends there with that person. What happens to the other persons with disability society? We're trying to encourage that you begin to see persons with disabilities as viable members of society. So you employ them and give them employment. And that way you have empowered them to have earning ability. Their livelihoods are improved. We have to change our thinking. We can't continue to stay where we are, or else it will become like a burden to everybody. So you do propagandas and you want it to go on the first page of the news where, this one did 50. What happens to the other people? And 50 million or 10 million will finish if that person doesn't have a source of livelihood. So we need to step away from some of this. And honestly, I repeat, if you are blessed to do that, enjoy. But where you're in a position that you can empower, so for example, let's say the Ministry of Women Affairs is doing an empowerment program for women. Now, a lot of times what happens is that I want to just try to do specialized programs. Those are good. But if you have a program where you're empowering women, one of the things you can say is that if we're empowering women so and so, at least 5%, 10% should be women with disabilities. You're doing a lot already. So that's the thinking. That's a way forward. And I really like what Saz said in this new cabinet to make a difference. One of the things they can do is ensure that the structures in government are there so that the voices of persons with disabilities are heard across the different MDAs so that it is more inclusive. So, for example, in Ministry of Health, they want to do something and they ask, how can we ensure this is inclusive? Now, that is the conversation that we're talking about. For example, Primary Healthcare Management Board, we did an advocacy to them. And one of the things they said is that the current model primary health centers in Rivers State, and one of the things that they ensured to do was make sure that they were accessible. And that's good information to have, the model ones, so that they are accessible. And one of the things that we intend to do in the area of health in partnership with even the Obiopo is to put on stickers to show that those PHCs, those primary health centers, we say that they are disability friendly. So some of these things begin to change the mindset of people. So I'm hoping that these really help. So I really like that contribution. And back to the young man who talked about his mom. So you do not want to make assumptions. We see too many assumptions. have a conversation with your mother as regards to what this help you think it is needed. Because what I hear is a woman who is probably advanced in her age, which is what people don't realize, that disability is it's part of a life cycle. Whether I have it now, whether it's acquired as a young person, whether it's acquired in mid-age, age will catch up with you. So when you are building your upstairs in the village, know that you may live in the downstairs of your village at the end of the day. So engage with your mom to find out what exactly it is she needs in this later advanced stage of her life. Is it just palliative care? What exactly would this help be? And that's what you do. But the way I hear it, I hear that you have an advanced mom who, in her aging, has become a person with disability. So number one, the responsibility of care of any aged or elderly in this country comes back to the parent. That's where we are at. So your siblings would have to take care of your mom. And then if it is what kind of disability, then you give her the required assistive devices to ensure that she has some level of independency. So those are some things. So that help has to be defined. And that is by engaging with the mom. And I'd like to say, never assume that you know the needs of a person with disability. Ask, engage with the person. Just so on the lighter note, why I'm saying this, there was a young man who came and met me in church, and he said, "Oh, there's a lady with disability on my street and I want to help her." And I asked a simple question: what help does she need? And he was like, she's a person with disability now. I said, okay, number one, do you know her name? He was wondering why we're going down this line of conversation. Have you talked to her before? And as far as he was concerned, she's a person with disability, she needs help. I told him, okay, let me give you another assignment. She's your neighbor, obviously, because you see her every day. Have a conversation with her and find out, at least know her name, ask her what she does. Honestly, he came back, he was like, whoa. So basically why he saw her was because every morning she's coming out to go to work and go about her business. And so his help, which he was thinking, was very myopic. She didn't, in fact, in the long run, he needed her help. So so don't just look and assume. You have no idea. So engage with people, have conversations. Thank you.
All right, engage with people, have a conversation. Is there any reach? How can people contact you and all of that? How people can reach you? Anyone listening to us right now?
All right. So with respect to our website, you can go to www.FAECAREFoundation.org. And FAECARE is F for fish, A for apple, E for egg, C for cup, A for another apple, R for rabbit, and E for egg. That's FAECARE. So www.faecarefoundation.org. That's our website. If you want to reach us by email, that's faecarefoundation.info@gmail.com.
All right, Angela, okay, you're not done.
Yes, and then our social media pages. On Facebook, we have, it's just type FAECARE, it will come out. Instagram, type FAECARE, it will come out. Twitter, FAECARE_org to come out. Then numbers to call. We have 081 32 00 2158.
You can go for that again.
Yes, you can go for that. You can also call 080 371 09285, or you can call 09074237731.
Quickly, Faith, Angela and Jocko, as we close, your parting shots, what would you want our listener to have as the closing? As if they've forgotten everything you said today, what should they take home?
They should always remember that persons with disability should also be included, especially for the government.
All right.
They should be included in whatsoever they are doing. A job, buildings, everything. Give us that access. Give us that freedom. Just make us to be included in everything you're doing. That's what I hope.
All right, Freke and Joe, Etienne, your parting shot.
Okay, for this episode, which is Understanding Disability, mine would be understand disability, engage with persons with disabilities, and do your own part in being inclusive You have a role to play. You are part of society. So do the needful. One of the things you can do is even by understanding disability. And so that's my message. And then do some thinking. Ask yourself, how am I perceiving disability? And if you are still on charity, I'll encourage you to step forward and begin to see that persons with disabilities have rights.
It's very important that you look at it from the perspective of that every human, even people with disabilities, do have rights, and it should be respected. Thank you very much, Angela Njoko, for your time here on radio.
Thank you so much.
And then Freki Andrew Essien, representing FAECARE Foundation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cos.
Hoping that next month, Thursday of third week,
Yes.
we're going to have even more enlightening episode here. I enjoyed it, every bit of it. I wouldn't want you to leave, but hey, our shows must go on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You've made my day. 12 o'clock, we'll bring you the world news, and after that will be the midday flow. Stay here. Do not touch the dial. This is where we draw the curtains for the Parliament on radio. It makes a return tomorrow, but the pidgin version of it will be handled by Santa Boki. All right? My stay here will come to an end. I mean, for today. I'm still around, dotting some I's, crossing some T's. I'm not going away. Stay here. Stay tuned.
Dear leader, dear political leader, whatever position at federal, state, or local government, remember that democracy is government of the people, for the people, and by the people. And persons with disabilities are people too. Protect the rights of persons with disabilities by ensuring disability mainstreaming in your agenda. Make and implement existing laws and build an inclusive society for all. A better and progressive Nigeria is an inclusive Nigeria. A better and progressive state is an inclusive state. Think inclusion, plan inclusion, and be inclusive. This message is brought to you by FAECARE Foundation, supported by Disabilities Rights Fund, a part of Disability Rights Initiative. Disability Rights Initiative Program DREAM, coming to you live every third Thursday of the month on Wish FM 99.5 by 10:30 a.m. This program is brought to you by FAECARE Foundation and her partners. Disability rights are human rights too. Disability Rights Initiative Program DREAM.
Cultism has never been